Hey, I'm Sam Pressler.
And I'm PJ Walsh, and welcome to In Stitches, the podcast that explores the humanity in humor.
Today we have on Steve Mazan.
Steve Mazan's an old friend of mine. Met in 2004, Sam. We did a trip overseas to entertain the troops in Iraq, and we've been good friends since, and I'm excited to share his story.
Yeah, it's a story that, of someone who was diagnosed with cancer and said he had 5 years to live and set out to achieve his wildest dream, which was to be a comedian performing on Letterman. And he achieved that wildest dream, which is enough for a movie, which he got. But what we explore in this conversation, what's really interesting is what comes after you achieve that wildest dream. And that's something we talk a lot about here, and we're excited to share with you. So without further ado, Steve Mazan. Welcome to In Stitches.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
Since we started this, Steve,
Yeah.
just so you know, you are at the top of my list of guests to get. And as this started forming into what it's becoming, which In Stitches is about humanity and humor, both sides of it, more and more I wanted you on.
Oh, awesome.
Very excited for our listeners to hear your story and your perspective and your humor, dude, because you're one of the best people I know.
Oh, awesome. Well, that makes me feel good. Thanks, buddy. And thanks. I'm glad you're at the top of the list. I hope you guys will work harder on the list, though, if I was at the top.
For what it's worth, you were very low on my list, and which is why you're not you're like our 8th episode or something. So maybe we start at the beginning, and would love for you to just kind of begin by describing what your childhood was like.
Yeah, I was born in a log cabin, and I was born in Illinois, which I think might be one of the original homes of the log cabin, story fable. But I was not. It was a suburban Chicago, probably lower middle class family. I think everyone thinks they were poor, right? Right? Isn't that a weird thing? Like no one's ever like, I grew up rich. But it was suburbs. It was kind of that John Hughes area of Chicago from the 80s. Growing up, I think two things kind of formed my humor to kind of get me on the track, maybe to be a stand-up comic later. I was kind of a mistake baby. Like there's my brother and sister a year apart, and then there's like an 8-year gap me. So I think my parents weren't planning on me or having any kids, and then I was a surprise. So I was the kid by the time they had me. It was a lot like, yeah, just keep yourself busy. Like we're doing our own thing. Like they were done parenting, I think, by that point. By that, just for attention, I think you look for attention then, especially as the youngest kid, you're third in line for everything. It was obvious that humor was the thing that would get my parents' attention. They were both very funny people. My sister and my brother were both very funny. And then I noticed that was what got them attention with each other, is when they were cracking each other up. So then that quickly became my thing, to try and like learn from them. To me, it was like they were the masters, and I was growing up and they're like, oh, my mom's got kind of more of a smart ass, sense of humor. My dad is kind of corny and he's got dad jokes, but they're pretty good. And he's kind of a physical comedian too. Like, so it was like taking from everything and then seeing if I could mold it all together to get their attention. And then on top of that, my dad, he was an alcoholic, a functioning alcoholic, but an alcoholic that caused some, strain. My parents got divorced when I was 10, at a time when, divorce wasn't as common as it is now. So I felt like I was the only kid in my class that had a divorced parent at that time. I remember it was kind of, you felt weird. Like my mom was even like, don't talk about it. Like it was like a weird thing. Like, don't tell people your dad and I are divorced. It's like, I think they're going to know when they come over and never see dad again, but that was the kind of thing, like put it away. But anyways, one of those things that the alcohol part, my dad coming home drunk or, screwing up the car or getting a DUI or the cops would drive him home or something like that. We would be shocked or sad about it for a day. And then the next day I would notice my mom, my brother, and my sister, they would start joking about it. They would start making fun of my dad. And like, if he came in drunk and he fell on the, floor, like it was like, oh my God, drag him to the bed. And then the next morning, my brother would be imitating my dad falling. And I know that sounds caustic or sad or like, that was also what saved us. That was rather than hanging on to this awful thing and being like, this is terrible. We made light of it, and that's just how kind of life unfolds. And I think that's one of the through lines I see. I'm sure everyone has that, but that's kind of what pushed me more, I think, toward stand-up comedy when I got into it later.
You know what I've just started chuckling about is we both lived through the time where cops would drive you home when you were drunk.
Exactly. Right.
You know, like that ain't around anymore. But I remember that back in my youth. They're like, we'll get you home, buddy. Don't worry about it.
Sometimes, right? Or they'd even point you out. They'd be like, "How close to home are you?" I just down the street. Okay, go ahead.
Follow the lights.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly. And again, thank God that time is gone. But it was a different time.
So you had humor. It was like part of your life from a coping perspective, right? It was the language. It was kind of coping with this presence in your family of your father not being like something not being
traditional.
Right. Yeah. And then, but there's also this flip that switch for you of like you became a comedian. So like maybe who were the comedians that you started watching? Like who were your favorite comedians? How do you start thinking about this, not just in like humor as a coping perspective, but like kind of comedy as an art form?
Yeah, so it was those two. I think that's what it was. That it was on two levels like that. That there was a reward aspect to it with my family, and then also the coping aspect of it. So it was these two angles. So it that was going already. And then my parents loved Johnny Carson, and I did too. I still love him. But we would watch him together. And then around 82, a couple of things happened. And I was 12 at that time. One, right after Johnny Carson, David Letterman started coming on. He got his own show and come on right after Carson. So my parents would go to bed, and then I'd stay up. I think I had a black and white TV maybe in my room or something. And I would turn it on. And all of a sudden there was this guy that was from Indiana. He didn't seem as polished as Johnny Carson. He seemed like a Midwest guy, like not, he was older than me, of course, but he seemed more like me. He had a gap in his tooth. He wasn't particularly good looking, and he had all these, I had seen comedians on Carson before, but again, they seemed much more ingrained in showbiz. They seemed like the old kind of vaudeville guys, and they're great, and I loved them. But all of a sudden, Letterman, his humor was different. It seemed much hipper and younger, closer to what me and my young teen friends would laugh at. It was sillier. It was kind of anti-Carson, a little bit anti-establishment. It was making fun of himself, his own show, which I hadn't seen someone do before. And so I fell in love with him, and I fell in love with the comedians that he had on. Like he'd have on, Kinison and Andy Kaufman and these guys that would never be on Johnny Carson until they were big from David Letterman. And at the same time, so I had seen these that you could be a comedian, but I guess I didn't realize that you could do that as a living. I understood if you were a funny person, maybe you would get a show, that kind of thing. But I didn't understand that there were comedians going out and doing a comedy. So the comedy boom was really starting around then. And we got cable one day. I came home, and again, I thought we were poor. And I remember my mom saying, "We got cable." And I was like, are we rich? Are we like, it seemed like such a big deal. I mean, no, everyone has cable now, but it was such a big deal. Like the people, I remember like in grade school, if you heard someone had HBO, you're like, HBO?
Oh yeah.
What the? Like that was a big deal.
Big deal.
Or if they had the first people who got a VCR, I was like,
forget it.
A VCR? You have a VCR?
Steve, my dad brought home a Betamax VCR. A Betamax. I was like, did you do any research? You can't get tapes for these. We're like, VCR! What's
right.
Beta? What's Betamax? It was a little bit cheaper. I got a deal. Yeah. Watching one movie for 5 years straight.
You were living high on the hog for 3 months. You were like, they were. That's so funny. Yeah, you cash in on the wrong end. But yeah, I remember those hallmarks. Like I really did. It was a big moment to get that. So, anyways, the first night we got cable, we did have HBO when we first got it. I'm sure it was like a deal. And we turned it on. It was around Christmas, and the first thing we watched with me and my mom, I think my brother and sister, my sister was away at college or something, so I was just home alone with my mom at that point, is Rich Little's Christmas Carol. So it was him doing all the stuff. It was funny, you know, but it's Rich Little was kind of a Carson guy. This kind of goes to that stuff. And then my mom goes, okay, I'm going to bed. And I stayed up, and Richard Pryor Live was on HBO. And I was just blown away. First of all, I had never heard anyone kind of loosely talk like he did, you know what I mean? With the way he casually talked about sex or casually swore. Or, I mean, it was, you know, it just wasn't, I had seen him on stuff. I had seen, you know, movies with him, but it wasn't this just gritty and dark. And then him talking about his family and his relationships and how messed up he was, and just being so honest about it. And then that there was a crowd of 3,000 people watching him do it. It was my first realization that was like, oh, this maybe not viable for me, but it is a viable choice to become a comedian like that. You could go and do that. Like, you don't have to have the movie or a sitcom. You could go and just perform for people. So that was a light bulb. And from that moment, I was like, I am going to be a comedian someday. I am going to do it. I want to do what he's doing there. I want to make fun of I'm already making fun of my family with them. I want to take it to the streets. The people need to know how screwed up my family is and how I am, you know? And so that coinciding with then Letterman was like, I'm going to become a comedian. I'm going to be on the Letterman show someday. So those were the two things that the impetus for like, this will happen someday, you know, which becomes, right, you know, a good plan, but also, you know, someday later becomes a little bit of a crutch where you're like, you know, yeah, it's easy to keep pushing things off like that.
So Steve, I do want to know, you know, kind of what your story was, and kind of going from, okay, stand-up is something that I saw Pryor do it. I saw these guys on Letterman do it. This is something that like I can actually do. What was that process like for you of actually going from like, this is something I might be able to do, that this is something I'm doing?
So that's a little bit of that tangent story I told goes to that. I mean, there was a lot of wanting to do it, feeling it inside, like I'm going to do this, but not even I didn't even tell, like, I wouldn't even say it to my mom, you know, who I was probably closest with that time, or my dad, these people that I loved being funny with, or my friends, I would never admit that I wanted to be a comedian. Because again, it just seems so, I grew up in the Midwest. I didn't know anyone. Like, I imagine if you grew up in LA, at least, like you would know someone who was in that business. You knew someone who worked on a show or something. It just seemed ridiculous to be part of the entertainment business. Everyone I knew was very stable stuff. Anytime you would talk even about like, I would love to do this, like, I want to be a baseball player, like, you know, that kind of thing. Like, my family was like, you're not going to be a baseball player. Pick something stable. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, that was the attitude then. It wasn't like today where they'd be like, okay, let's get you in a camp and let's do that. Like, we're going to do everything we can so that you're going to live this dream. And then later you fall back on my mom was the opposite. She was like, you're going to learn to be an accountant, and then you could try your baseball thing after accounting class. Like, you know, that was like, so it was never it was a thing I had to learn, and it took me a long time to learn to share. We live in a sharing society now. The world has turned that way. That before it was you would keep stuff inside like that, and now it's and arguably it's gone too far where people share every single thing. But that's literally what ended up happening. Is the world's come that way, that now social media allows us to share every single thing we're thinking. And there's bad parts of it, but there's also these good parts that you can put this idea out there, whatever it might be, and people end up helping you or directing you at least that direction. So I had no idea how to make it happen. So I just lived a pretty stable life with that in the back of my head. I went and I joined the Navy when I was 18. I ended up going into some, they lured me with this nuclear program in the Navy that was very tough, very hard, and I failed out of it. And then I served aboard a submarine for 4 years after that. And then went to college. So all these just normal things afterwards. And then I moved to California. My sister was living in Northern California, just outside San Francisco. She had 2 kids. They were like 1 and 2 at the time. And I wanted to see them grow up. I wasn't going to have kids anytime soon. So I moved out there from Chicago. And within, I think it was 3 or 4 months, her husband got a job back in Chicago, and they picked up and moved back to Chicago. So I was like, it was like, all right, do I follow them back to Chicago or in there? And I was like, all right, you know what? You're out here by yourself. I remember from following comedy growing up that Jake Johansson and Robin Williams and Dana Carvey had all come from San Francisco. So I started looking into it, and there was a robust comedy scene in San Francisco. And I was like, you're out here alone. Your family just left you. You've been holding on to this dream for, at that point 16 or 17 years and never had the balls to do it. Go out and just try it, like, just so you can say you at least tried it. And I went to a place. I found an open mic in San Francisco that was at a laundromat. It was called the Brainwash Café and Laundry, but it was basically a laundromat that had a cafe in it, and you would go and perform while people did their laundry. And I showed up at 8:00. It was a show up sign up. I showed up at 7:30. No one else was there. I signed up. I knew I was smart enough to put myself third on the list because I didn't want to go first. I was like I was so 90s comic. I had a blazer on and a tie, and I was ready. And people came in and looked at me like, "What is this idiot?" You know. But they just kept pushing me down the list. They didn't let me go third. They're like, "Oh, you're new? Okay, yeah, we're going to put you up later." Wow. So I had drove into the city from the East Bay. So I had worked all day, drove in the hour into the city, signed up, and then I'm waiting at this place, and they kept bumping me. I didn't go on till like 11:30 as the place was closing down. And it was just me, the guy before me, the host, a guy, the guy that worked there cleaning up, and then some girl folding, like kind of looking up from folding her laundry. And the only electricity in there was the static clean. That was it. The only vibe that was going on. But it was so cheesy. I think I got one laugh, but that was enough. I mean, you guys know, like that's it. It didn't. I know all these people that are like, I killed the first time. I so didn't kill the first time, but I did get one laugh on something. And you could not wipe the smile off my face. I remember walking to the car and I felt like Judd Nelson at the end of Breakfast Club. I remember doing like a fist bump. Like, I did what I said I was going to do. It took me this time. I'd never shared this dream with anyone. And I had started. And in the back of my head, I was like, yeah, I should be on Letterman within 6-7 months. Probably. Sure, that wasn't a great set. I'll clean that up. But those jokes are quality. Those people didn't understand. But so that's what it took. I mean, a long, long time of keeping that dream in the back of my head. But yeah, just the balls. I remember even seeing like a Road Rules. Remember that MTV show?
Oh yeah.
Where they force the people to do comedy. And I remember sweating watching it bad. Like before I started. Like it felt so like, oh my God, can you imagine being thrown in front of an audience and them rejecting you live? Like it's something I take for granted because it's the first thing people say, like when they find out you're a comedian. They're like, I could never get up and do that. How do you do that? And now it's second nature. I mean, I still get excited and nervous about it, but it's a different thing. But the first time, like one of my close friends in comedy talks about like them pulling him backstage the first time, and there's an exit door right there, and he goes, "When they said my name, I was equally likely to go out that exit door." Right. And he's like, "I'm not trying to be funny. Like it's that. It's so you forget how scary it is the first time." So literally years of building up to just get the chutzpah to try it.
You also started developing your crew up there, though, right? Like Gary and Lee. You started because this is essential in the community. Yeah,
yeah.
And they carry.
And again, that's like I said, how I said at the beginning. I can't imagine my comedy career without you, PJ. I mean, there's just people you meet along the way that help you, and there's probably in that first year, like I said, how I thought I was going to be on a TV show in 8 months. Like you just quickly realize it's a marathon. And you takes a long time. I remember Greg Proops. I remember reading something saying it's 7 years till you even find your voice, and I was like, well, that's ridiculous. And then even I got twice past 7 years. At 15 years, I was like, I'm still learning this thing. It's crazy. It's so tough. But those are finding friends and finding other people, your peers in it that get what you're doing, or whether they get it or not, they're just supportive and they're going through the same thing. It's almost a military thing. It really is like you're in the foxhole with these guys. Like, ooh, that was a rough one out there. You really, you took some action, and we all went down tonight, but we did it together. And you can laugh about it. It goes back to the same thing, a little coping. You make fun of each other. Yeah.
Hurry up and wait. Lots of drives. Get into some place for 7 minutes. Yes. You're in the back. Yeah.
PJ, absolutely. We've talked about this. There's, when you do well, you kill. When you do poorly, you bomb. Like, you call, comics call non-comic civilians. Like there's a lot of parallels.
A lot.
Right. Oh, 100%. Yeah. How long you got in? How much time? How much time you been in? Right? Yeah.
And what's even more interesting is if the audience goes off the rails and we feel it's the audience's fault, they become the enemy to every 100%. Single comedian. Like if they mess with Steve, I'm coming up and I'm destroying them. Like, you guys know who the hell that guy is? There is that mentality for sure.
100%.
Yeah. We rather go back to Denny's, sit back and have camaraderie and be like, look, we'll never be invited back to that place, but fuck them, man. We're in this shit together. Exactly it's so right. True.
It's so true. I never put it all together how military it is. It really ends up being like that. Yeah.
So you, Steve, what was the process from being, you're the last open micer at a laundromat, coffee shop, open mic, which I will say that every person who's lived in San Francisco or has done comedy in San Francisco has a Brainwash story, which I love.
Yes.
But what was that?
And you found out, I was so sad. You found out they've closed it. I mean, this thing had been going for 20 years. Like, it's just nuts. Moment of silence for Brainwash.
R.I.P.
Okay. Yeah, it was just going out. I had a day job. I lucked out. There's those things. I think there's so much luck to a career and a life, really. I mean, I feel lucky to have found the friends I have through it. At that time when I started, I ended up, luckily, my sister bailed on me in a city that was known for good comedy. Luckily, I didn't move to Omaha or something for her. I had a job that was pretty stable and would give me time off to go do comedy gigs. And it was one of those gigs that was 9 to 5, and I could leave at 5 and not, think about it again. So I could go and do a couple open mics every single night, drive into the city. And I had a car. That was a big thing, especially amongst comics, and in San Francisco, it was not a driving town. And then most of the older comics had DUIs and stuff, so they either didn't have a car or they weren't allowed to drive. So any person who did have a car, you immediately, if jumped up 3 spots on the comedy level, because you could drive these people to their gigs and they would get you stage time. And then, I think after probably 2 years or so of doing as many open mics, I had a calendar on my desk. And this is one of the things I do think, like, envisioning it, sharing it with other people, that stuff is so powerful. And like I said, I really love how the world, we trash social media, and it deserves it a lot. But there's also the part that we are a much more sharing society than we used to. I think that's a good thing. We're putting those connectivity, things much closer together, so that if you want to do something, someone else can help you with it. And that's kind of what it was. I would just envision it on my calendar on my desk. I'd write how many open mics I did that week on each day, and I would grade myself and go out and do it each night. And after a couple of years, I got good enough that the clubs were like, okay, yeah, start calling us for work. And you would then branch out further, clubs further north or south or in a different state. And then luckily, when I lost my job, it just, the economy tanked in 2003 or so. I had enough comedy work that I could start doing that full time. It was good and bad, that lesson. One of the things that was tough about it is everything had come to me. Like, it was just like, it was that Midwest mentality. Work hard, learn how to do something, and you work hard and people will help you to what you want to do. You know what I mean? They'll tell you, hey, come with, I meet PJ on the road. Oh my God, dude, you're funny. You should call Frank up in Nevada, and he'll get you work. That kind of thing. Things came to me. So I was that was my attitude about the Letterman thing was yeah, someday I'll get on Letterman. Eventually I'll be working somewhere and someone who knows the Letterman people or the Letterman booker will hear about me through someone else. So I wasn't chasing it. I was just kind of going through those motions.
And I want to say, Sam, to tell you, on this step as a comedian, there's a big tent pole that you blew over that I don't think people who aren't comedians understand, is that calendar. It's like, I did the same thing. You're looking at that calendar, it's color coordinated, how many days. And then one day you look at that calendar and you have more days of being paid comedy and you're looking for a day off. Right. And that step kicks your shoulders back in a way of, I'm doing this. I'm a comic now.
Yeah.
You know?
You're 100% PJ. In fact, I remember, so I went to college before, like Navy college, and then in California, and working a day job, but doing comedy then. And I remember sending an email to a friend that I knew from college and I had started having at the bottom of my thing, comedian on the bottom of my thing. It was just the kind of where people would say, your phone number and stuff. I had changed that to comedian. And he wrote back and he was like, "Oh, someone's a comedian now." And I was embarrassed at first. And then I was like, "No, but yeah, I am. I'm getting paid to do this. And I'm proud of it. And I can do it." But it was a weird thing. But yeah, then all of a sudden you forget those marks, those benchmarks along the way. And that was one of them where I am a comedian. Yeah.
Now we're gonna step into the next section, which we visited.
Yeah.
We visited quite a bit. And
yes, yeah.
For me personally, this is also where I went on my own journey. So as we go through this, I'll have to say what I have to say about it after, because it is.
Yeah, but, I'll give you guys
at your height.
Yes, please, and please share it, because I've told the story so much. There's a book, there's a documentary that covers it. But I'll give you the brief story about it, and then we can dig wherever we want. So I moved down from San Francisco to Los Angeles about that time, 2003, doing comedy down here for a couple of years, and coming home with a friend, Gary Cannon, a mutual friend of PJ and I's. We're coming home from the Improv, and I started having some pain, and I was like, "You got to drive." I was in the back seat, and then my girlfriend, who's now my wife, when I get home, she's like, "I think you have food poisoning," which the Improv is probably known for food poisoning. But it wasn't. I end up in the hospital, and they're like, "Oh, your appendix burst." That's what they think happened. They're like, "We're going to do an appendectomy." I wake up, and now a different doctor's there, and he's an oncologist. He introduced himself, and I know that's not good. And he says, "We found tumors all over your liver. We know they didn't come from there. We're going to have to start doing some tests." And then we go on a 2-month thing where they try and find where all these tumors on my liver. They're cancerous. They find it in my intestines. It's stage 4 cancer. I get a worst case scenario that I have 5 years to live. And, it's just a shock. I went from nothing, like feeling healthy, feeling good, living comedy, living my dream, to all of a sudden, you might not be here 5 years from now. And I'm not a worst case scenario guy. I'm one of those guys that pushes back. I'm going to prove them wrong, that kind of thing. But you have to realize, if someone who's a doctor much smarter than me is saying that, I have to consider it. And so I was like, if I really only have 5 years, what do I want to accomplish in those 5 years? I ended up getting married. And the really big thing was, like, I realized then I had been waiting for this Letterman thing. That was the dream in my life, was to get into comedy and get on Letterman. And I had been waiting for it to come, just figuring, just keep working hard and it'll eventually come to you. And now I realized I might not be able to. If I'm saying someday that'll happen, the someday might not be there. I might not be there when someday comes. So you gotta start chasing it instead of just inactively, like, waiting for it to come to you.
That sounds like, I got diagnosed with cancer, and like, then I just said, if not now, when? And I decided I'm gonna get on Letterman. Like,
yeah,
I'm a little incredulous of, like, the straight line nature of that.
Yeah,
so, like,
it's not at all. Yeah.
What was that in that like,
Yes.
in the moment from when you got your diagnosis to just deciding, like, what went on? Like, how did
Oh my God, yeah.
go?
There's months to probably 2 years of just what the hell. Like I said, I'm trying to give you the encapsulated version. So I'm glad you asked that. Yes, it's because I don't want to gloss over that. I don't want to make it sound like it's not. I mean, there's depression, denial, lots of anger. I mean, like, I was 34 at the time. I was like, what the hell? Like, I have cancer that can end my life in 5 years. Like, just ridiculous. Like, a lot of why me? A lot of like, why do anything? Like, it took a long time to get to that point to turn it on its head. It was, I remember being sad. My whole family, my friends, everyone rallied around me. But then a week later, they were all back at work, and then 2 weeks later, I was like, oh shit, I got to get back. I still have to pay rent for these 5 years, I guess. So I have to work. The routine angered me at first that like life did go on after that diagnosis for everyone else. And I had this, what I imagine like for lack of a pun, deadline out there somewhere. It made me sad. It made me angry. It made me angry at my friends and family that the life went on for them. But that routine also saved me a little bit because I had to jump back in then to do some work. And through that, slowly, you again, I at least felt after there were 2-3 months where I spent a lot of time in the hospital, a lot of time trying to find where the tumors had come from, going through all these tests and stuff. And I felt like a cancer patient. When I came out the other side of that, my day-to-day, I still felt healthy. You know what I mean? I knew that there were tumors I had on my liver that they were going to track and scan, and that they said were going to have some effect on me. But I could still exercise. I could still walk around. I could still go on stage. I wasn't attached to an IV. I wasn't in a wheelchair or using a cane or losing my hair for that reason. It was just normal male pattern baldness was going on. Then it started to turn a little bit like, okay, listen, maybe you're very lucky that you get to do this. I was still going to oncologist and I would be in a room with people who were older than me and much sicker than me. And it was like, oh geez, you not that you want a good kind of cancer. It's like, well, you're these 5 years, you're probably going to be okay. You're going to be able to live whatever life you want during that time. And so that slowly through, luckily my wife and my family and everyone kind of yanking me a bit out of the depression and the anger of it all. That's kind of when everything came out. Like, what are you going to do with this? Like, okay, you got it. Is that going to be your defining thing? Is like, oh, you got cancer and 5 years later you die. Or are you going to do something with it? Are you going to do something with those 5 years? So that became the thing. Like I said, my just talking on the love part, like that got me through that. My girlfriend at the time, we had been dating 6 months at that time when I get this diagnosis. She's the same age. A woman in her 30s deciding to stay with someone who might not be there in 5 years, who that's the starting a family time for a woman. And we, like I said, knowing me 6 months, I don't know if the roles were reversed, I would have stayed with her. And not saying I loved her, just the practicality of it. If she wants to start a family with someone, I'm not the person to do it. And she stuck with me. I think feeling that love and feeling someone make a choice like that for you, that helped me immensely. We ended up getting married. And then it was finding direction for that 5 years. Making it more than just what I had been doing, the routine. I had found my stable part in comedy. Like I had finally found comedy. I was making a living at it, which was great. And I was puffing my chest out about it. But I had found what my mom had said, just the stable part of it. I had just been like, okay, work hard at it. And yes, you're working these places and that's enough. But I wasn't as passionate about it like when I had it, like, okay, get out there, do this. And so it was like anyone has, I think, there's so much military stuff we talk about together. These people who've had something happen to them in their life that changes it like that. I think all those people all of a sudden have a new perspective on the value of each day of, whether it be, living each day like it's your last, or the thing that came to me like is if you're not chasing your dream, you're already dead, right? Like that's it. So it was, okay, you're doing comedy. The big part of this was the Letterman thing. And so that slowly became that thing. So that took a year. I glossed over it, but yes, that's the deep part of it.
Yeah, because then after a year, you became laser focused. That became the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Who decided, all right, I'm going to document this journey?
It's a husband and wife team. They're so talented and they're such great storytellers. You've all read a book before, right? It's a cliche. The book was better than the movie because they make a book or there's a story and then they make it into a movie and the movie's not good, right? Because it's all about the quality of the storyteller. And these two are just amazing storytellers. So someone might have taken my story, which, again, sure, it's an interesting story, but it can still be told poorly. So when I met them, they were a husband and wife who had just graduated from UCLA Film School. Her name is Joke, which was very fitting. And his name is Biagio. I had all my comedy sets on VHS tapes. And so Biagio, I met him through a friend, Sue Nelson. I don't know if you knew her, PJ. She referred me to him to take all my VHS tapes and get them onto CD and DVD. Again, now there would be another step to just have them digital. So that's how I met. That's what they were doing right out of film school is making actors reels and doing stuff like that. So we became friends. And then again, this is before Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all this kind of stuff that would be the avenue now. At that time, when I made this choice, I would do a show. Well, afterwards, I would hand them a little card. And it was a website that they would go to. It was called Dying to Do Letterman. I thought it was a clever name. And said, you go to the site, and there was more of my comedy. If you enjoyed me tonight, if people came up, I wouldn't give it to everyone. But if people came up and they're like, oh my God, you were so funny, I'd be like, well, if you think so, help me out here. Here's the thing. Go to this website. And then there was a link that you could email the people at Letterman so I could get their attention. And that was it. So it was just a website in the beginning. And then people would start being like, hey, I emailed Dave. What's going on? Did you hear anything? So then my wife was like, you should put some updates on there, that kind of thing. So I would do little video updates and put them on there. And then a couple months after that, she goes, you should keep all those. Maybe there's something to do with this footage at the end. And then that couple, Joke and Biagio, who I had met earlier, years before, heard about the Dying to Do Letterman. And they actually, I remember they came to me and they go, hey, we actually now we're doing really well in Hollywood. We know Warren Littlefield. Mm. He's actually the guy that gave Jay Leno the job at the Tonight Show instead of Letterman. They're like, would you be interested in doing Leno? And I was like, no. Not that I would not want to do Leno. Any comedian would want to do Leno, but it would. You can't start a site saying I'm dying to do Letterman and be like, oh, but I'll take Leno, right?
I got to track down so many flyers. You don't understand how many people I got to go find. Cross out the last name.
Yes, exactly. Just change it, changing emails, whatever it takes. Yeah, so that was the impetus in the beginning. And then so that couple, after saying that, they're like, if there's anything else we could do. And I said, well, listen, my wife suggested this, that I keep all this footage. I know you guys are in that business. And then they said, let's have dinner. And so they had never met my wife, Denise. And when we met, they were like, this is really interesting what you're doing. And immediately they gave me a high definition camera. They're like, start documenting, start doing, confessionals, and let us know when anything comes up with it. We would love to start shooting it. And that was the impetus of the documentary. That, again, my goal at that time, I said, I'm going to give myself a year to get on Letterman. Mm-hmm. There was no way I was going to make it in a year. It's again, that's probably what they were smart enough in the business. They probably knew it was going to take a lot longer, a year, but they knew there's only two endings to this movie. Either I get on Letterman or I die trying, but they were up for that road either way.
And you also end up getting noticed.
Yes,
almost do the nuisance technique in the beginning, right?
Exactly. My idea was pull out all the stops, get noticed, and then in any form, and then they'll see that you're a good comedian. I had people tell me oh yeah, you're the kind of comedian Letterman would like, and that would make me. This is before this all happened. It was okay, I'm on the right track. I'm doing this. So I was convinced the minute the Letterman people discovered me, they would see my comedy and be like, oh yes, please come on the show, right? And instead they took it the other way. They're like, oh, this is just a kind of a make-a-wish thing. Mm-hmm. I immediately got a cease and desist letter from the executive producer of the David Letterman show, who I knew. I was such a Letterman fan, I knew her name. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, she wrote me a letter, great. And I didn't even think this is the time of email and cell phones. If she had good news, she would have sent it that way. If something's coming in the mail, it's bad news. It's literally you will not be on the show. It literally, the word impossible was in the letter.
Wow.
So again, I went through all those same feelings again. Was this stupid? I shouldn't have done this. Now I've made myself look like just a kid with cancer instead of like a comedian. Now that's what they think of me. But then slowly with my wife and my friends and everyone else was like, well, you got their attention. Okay, now prove that part wrong. Again, you want to prove these oncologists wrong? You're going to live more than 5 years? Prove them wrong. That make them realize you're not just like a sad sack charity case. And so that's what it was. I figured, okay, well, I got their attention, just ignore the impossible part. And then just started sending them, now that I had their information, I started sending them more comedy. The ups and downs over the points. At one point I got to work with the booker at Letterman for a week doing comedy. And I was like, oh, this is it. He'll see by the end. He didn't watch one of my sets. Nothing.
Wow.
Like, I think he was purposely trying to stay away from it. But I did get his email, so I started sending him stuff. And then there was, like, the first time he actually looked at one of my sets, he liked one joke. But again, it was a flashback to that Brainwash thing. Like, I was sad, but I was always like, also like, all right, I know what he wants. I know, like, the kind of joke he wants. Like, I remember him saying on the phone, he's like, this won't work, this won't work, this won't work. But this joke Dave would love. And I was like, oh, all right. Now I just got to replicate that for 5 minutes, So it was chasing that. So yeah, lots of rejection for 5 more years. It took me a long time and years of not hearing it, sending 6 sets to him over a year and hearing nothing from him, thinking like, oh, this whole thing is gone. And then just randomly, I sent a set one time. I was chasing that one joke that he had said Dave would like. So I tried to replicate that joke over and over. I remember him saying like, oh, your other jokes, they've got too much acting a character out, or you're doing voices, or you're doing this, or it's one long joke. Like, that's not the kind of jokes we have on it. So I was avoiding that. But I had got so frustrated when I sent him a DVD one time. I sent him 5 minutes of this new stuff. And then at the end of it, I had done a 10-minute set. The last 5 minutes was all stuff I knew he would hate. It was one long joke about using a key at a hotel. And I just got so upset. I was like, I'm not even going to edit it. I'm just sending him the DVD that I have, the 10 minutes. Because before that, I'd be like, here's what I'd like to do on the show. And now I was like, he's ignoring me. Just send him this thing and he'll watch the first 5 minutes or he won't. And he gets back to me. And of course, just as fate would have it, he didn't like the 5 minutes, but he goes, the stuff at the end, though, which was all stuff he had said he didn't like.
Yeah. Story, physicality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Voices, all this kind of stuff. One long bit. Everything he said he didn't like, that's what he ended up liking. And I don't fault him for that. I do think it's like that thing where we all know a guy who's like, oh yeah, my kind of girl. I like blondes, but he's married to a brunette. Like, it's just when you see it, you see it, right? When you know what you like, it's obvious. And even though this bit, so that was the way he called me up and said, hey, this is it. You're going to be on. And it was one of the greatest days of my life.
I do think it's fascinating that as you were chasing what he might like, you were getting continually rejected. But the thing that it was a joke that was on your own terms was what they ended up. And there's like, I think this is a theme that's come up when we've talked. I've talked to other comics, is like the truest material ends up being the ones that are received the best. It's really, really interesting. I didn't know that part of it.
Yeah. And it's just, like you said, the truest to yourself. It was just a joke. And again, and also a little bit of, I think some of the rebellion or the fuck it attitude was just like, I'm not editing this out. I'm so over it. And again, there was the luck part of that, just leaving it on there. But yeah, just like, well, this is my thing. And and he got to see it. And you're right. There was probably something in it that first 5 minutes felt needy and felt like I'm trying to do something you want. And then all of a sudden there was a casualness to the next 5 minutes because it was what my stuff. Yeah.
So you get on Letterman. Talk a little bit about what that experience was like.
Yeah. I mean, as you can imagine, just an amazing day. And I had talked part of the documentary is me talking to other people who have done Letterman. So like Ray Romano, Brian Regan, Kevin Nealon, Arj Barker, all these people who had done, Jim Gaffigan, who had done it. So I had heard all these stories about doing Letterman. So then now, again, I imagined it happening, but now it was real. I had a date. I knew when I was supposed to be there, but now all these stories of these other people having done it, them getting bumped, them getting stories of people I love. Nick Griffin had a story of having the mic in his hand, and he was there, the guy's holding the curtain to let him out, and then the guy grabbing the microphone, the Biff, if you remember the show, grabbing the microphone from him, being like, it's not happening, like because something went wrong or something, and like you're that close to walking out on stage. So all of that. Ray Romano has one of driving in. He's on the bridge into New York City, and he gets the call that no, it's not going to happen today. So then you're like, okay, yes, they said yes, but will it really happen? So there's the nervousness around it. For whatever reason that day, I was not nervous. I don't know what it was. And I think PJ will back to, so we talked about this before. I get nervous sometimes at like a coffee shop, open mic. There's just no randomness to it of why sometimes you feel the stakes are higher. I don't know. Or a new club, a lot of times, like it feels weird. You're not used to the dimensions. But I remember going there that day, and Eddie Brill, the booker, took me out, and he showed me the star. You'll walk out. Here's where you stand. The band will be here. And then he goes, okay, let's go. I'll take you back to the dressing room. And I was like, can I stay here? And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I just like to stand here so that I feel, so when I come out here later, I feel like it feels like home rather than you just showing me. And he's like, yeah, I got to go. He's like, stay here as long as you want. People are going to be filing in soon. And I did. I just stood there and took it all in and kept looking like where the band was and where the things, so that when I came out later, it felt routine. It didn't feel like the first time. And I think that was valuable. And then, being backstage with Biff before the show, and then the guest before me was Neil Patrick Harris, Doogie Howser, and he was super funny that night, which was probably great because then he's like your warm up act. But it was also a little bit like, well, he's famous and funny. You know what I mean? Like you're going out there alone, people not knowing who you are.
Right. And
they extended him a segment, so I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna get bumped. They're gonna bump me for Doogie Howser, right?
Doogie Howser.
So Doogie. But finally, he got done. He came off, and he came over, and he was like, oh, you're the comedian? I can't wait to see it. He was super nice. Then I'm like looking at Biff, who's got the headset on, and he's just standing there. He was in the Navy, so we kind of bonded over that. We were talking about it. And I kept waiting for him to like reach his ear, like something was coming in, like I'm getting bumped, and nothing happened. And then, just went out, and it was so great. You're performing again. It's the Ed Sullivan Theater. It's where the Beatles and Elvis played to this theater. And I started thinking, it's my favorite thing about comedy that I didn't know before comedy is how many things you can think about at the same time. In comedy, you could be telling your joke. You can be thinking how that last joke you told bombed or didn't get what it deserved. You're thinking about the next joke you're going to do and be like, don't forget, you want to do that new thing you added there where you make the face when you say blue, and you got to be in the moment of what you're doing now, acting that out. And it's all going through your head at the same time. So I remember being on the stage and it was going well. I had heard Dave laugh behind me. I heard Paul was really laughing and someone else in the band. And then of course the crowd is clapping. They're awesome. And I remember thinking in my head, because they ask you, they're like, what's the last word you're going to think? I can't remember what my last word is. Swipe it or something like that. Stick it in and don't look was the last word. And when I say don't look, the band's going to kick in when I say those last words. But in my head, I was like, it was going so well. I was like, just go on to a different joke. What are they going to do? Like I had felt like I won so much at that point that I was like, you made it here. Like do those jokes that you wanted to do that they said weren't good enough for the show or weren't Dave's type that you've always wanted to do on the show. Just do another 5. What are they going to do? Like at some point they're going to be scrambling, but that's all going through my head. And then like I'm literally thinking about going long. Like what are they going to hook you? Or the camera's going to go off? Is someone going to run out? But I'm thinking that. And then I also, all of a sudden, like common sense comes in and I'm like, hey idiot, you're on TV right now. Get out of your head. Like, you focus on what you're doing right now. And I actually do make a mistake. I screw up. I can't remember what it is. I haven't watched the set in a while, but I do screw up a line in there. There's a logic fault where you wouldn't see it, but I know it because I know the joke so well. I think that was part of it because I'm so often in the air in my head there. So it was an amazing day. It's crazy. I don't want to tell too much from the documentary. There's some weird stuff that goes on with it that my wife ends up not be able to make it, and I expected her to be there, but I had my mom and some friends there who ended up coming to the show, and we all went out to eat afterwards. And then me and my friend Gary stayed up till like 4 a.m. just walking around Times Square and eating pizza and just like not wanting the day to end. It was magical. It was really, one of those things. And I kind of got a double dose because they taped 2 shows that day. So it was a Tuesday, but mine didn't air till Friday. So I kind of got 2 Lettermans. I got the day of, and then I got to be back Friday, and then we had a party at my house and watched it when it came on. So it was nice that it wasn't just one day. It was a whole week really of fun. So yeah, it was amazing. But yeah, then there's like, okay, what now?
This moment when you stepped out on the stage is another tentpole, I think, in a comic, because your wife didn't get to be there.
Yeah,
you're by yourself, and you got to walk out there. You walked into the laundromat by yourself.
Yeah.
You looked at the calendar by yourself. And I had an acting teacher who said something to me years ago, and I always, if you do all the work you can, and then let it go. Mm-hmm. And when I look at your story and everything you went through up until this moment, you're a perfect example of that.
Right. And I to that point, I think that's the closest anyone's come to encapsulating why I wasn't nervous that day. Because it felt like that already. It felt like you had done this. This is the destination, is opening that curtain, walking out there. But you've done everything to get there. You've learned to do this thing you said you were going to do. You do the ups and downs of it all. You've learned to be good at it. You're ready for this. You've practiced hundreds of thousands of times. I ran through that set, either on stage or in my room, leading up to it. I knew it backwards and forwards. There's just that confidence of putting in that work, knowing it, and then, letting it go. And that's how it felt when I walked on set. I really think that's why I wasn't nervous, because it was like, it's done. It's already, it's almost like you're on the other side of it.
And now, not to give out any spoilers, but the part that Sam wants to go to, you lived.
Yes. A walking spoiler alert. Yeah. He's here plugging his movie. Well, how did this happen?
Sam kept calling me. He goes, how's this going to end?
Yes, right. What's going to happen? How did you not know?
Steve's going to pull out.
But I think the thing that's interesting, and you said it earlier in the interview, and I know you've been quoted as saying this before, but you stop chasing your dreams, you're already dead. Like, you accomplished your ultimate dream, right? Like, this is the thing you've said you wanted to do since you were 12. It's the thing that you said, if I have 5 years to live, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've told the story about what that 5 years would look like. What have the 10 years since then looked like for you?
Yeah. Well, look at me. Obviously not good. That's a tough thing, because I remember. I'm going to fast forward just a little bit. So one of the things that saved me, because that is a big thing, and it's something, to be, in all honesty, I'm still dealing with today, and it feels almost. I don't know what the word to label it, but there is some. I don't know to it. You know what I mean? I don't have a perfect answer to it, because I was all in on this thing. It was every marble out for it, this dream, and then to accomplish it, that was every focus. One of the things that helped is that there was this couple, these 2 filmmakers who had been documenting everything. So neatly, we had something else to focus on immediately. They had the ending of their film. They had told me, they're like, thank God it ended this way. We thought either it ends with you dying, and we have this nice idea that someone spent their life, whatever time they had left, chasing this, even though it didn't happen, or you make it to the Letterman show, and so we have a happy ending. So now there was the time to put that footage together. We had 300 hours of footage over those 5+ years.
Wow.
So I had something immediately to focus on instead. So I had reached this peak, which was great. And then, yeah, the movies can't be the same peak, but it was at least something to do. It was an assignment I had to keep busy afterwards. So fast forward about 2 years from that, when we're showing the movie, now it's out and we're showing at film festivals and winning awards for it. It was great. And again, it filled in that blank where I didn't have to think about that. Like, what now? And we're at film festivals, and that's what people started asking. Okay, you did this. You're still alive. Like, what now? What do you do? You look healthy. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I guess I was ignoring it. You know what I mean? Like, not thinking it, because I did have something to fill it in. And so now, the past 8 years since the movie came out, like, it's been a guessing game a bit, trying to find. I mean, I have other goals. I had other TV shows I wanted to be on that I was able to get on. I had other things. I ended up writing for Ellen DeGeneres. Some other career goals that I have, but there's nothing to that level of Letterman. There's just not. And again, we all know movies. That's why it just goes to happily ever after, because you can't, once you get to that some gigantic goal of something like that, you can't tell more of a story. That's why the last Lord of the Rings sucks, because there's 20 minutes at the end that we don't need. Like, stop once whatever his name says, the Hobbit shouldn't bow to anyone. The movie should end. I'm going on a tangent here, but the point is, you end at a high point. That's my high point. Probably, yeah. If I lived to 80, that's most likely going to be the high point of my life. But life goes on after it. So I filled it in with other goals and other things and other kind of work I want to do, and I've been lucky to make that happen. But yeah, there's never. I don't know. I haven't found anything to replace it with that has given me that same passion.
Like, I feel like there's something very it's like very American about this. Is like, we focus on the high point and then we don't ask what happens after.
Right. Yes. 100%.
Even like with ASAP, when I was running ASAP, people would see, the veterans and family members in our program on stage doing well. And we would do these panels, which PJ's been a part of, and they're very moving. And I would always say, it's like, it's not about this moment. It's about all the moments afterwards and having that community. So like, I was wondering, did you have a moment of like, okay, well, like, this chasing of a dream, like, maybe that's not the orientation that makes sense in this next kind of stage of my life?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I think I'd mentioned that there's a I always go back to this F. Scott Fitzgerald, who did Gatsby, has this quote that in American lives there are no second acts. And I think it's the stupidest quote I've ever heard in my life, because literally every American story has like 5 acts. There's always someone you think is gone, and then 30 years later they come back. And again, I think you're right. I think it's just the framing of it. It's the framing of the peak. And yeah, probably career-wise, I'm never gonna get bigger than that peak. But I've had moments since that. This sounds strange. We're in the midst of this for people that maybe hear this later, but the coronavirus going on now, and I have no idea what's on the other side of this. It's so strange. As a comedian, I don't know what comedy clubs are going to be around. I don't know if there's going to be corporates or clubs or cruises or all the places we perform, what any of those places are going to go. But this is also like, I've been able to kind of ignore it. It's also been a good time to focus on those other things. I've got to spend more time with my wife than I ever have in these past few months. My friends, I've got to spend a lot more time with them because they have the free time. I've got to work out and get outside and enjoy California, that I love living in, and get to the beach. And I just, in a crazy, screwy time of not knowing what the future brings, I'm pretty happy right now. So it is. There is a lot of, in the framing of it, like, on that career angle, because that's the American thing, right? We put success is all related to money or accomplishment of your job, rather than it being like, are you doing what you want? Are you happy with it? Like that should be the more Zen kind of an Easter feeling of it, right? like, how do you feel? Are you happy? Do you feel fulfilled? And so and I think that's fair to change those things. Like, I wouldn't have thought that in those 5 years chasing that dream. To just worry about, like, oh, I married someone who obviously loves me, and and let that be enough. It still had to be Letterman, but I think the goalposts can change in your life, and they have to, or else you lead a very one road life, of like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
what's next career wise, and you hopefully have more to it.
You tell this Letterman story all the time, right? Like, we have our stories that we
Yeah,
tell and that we tell. Like, I
yeah,
guess,
yeah.
like, I have two questions. One, do you get tired of telling that story? And two, like, do you want to be defined by more than this, like, dying to do Letterman narrative now?
Yeah, two great questions, and yeah, it's something I'm immensely proud of. It's something, at the same time, part of me wants to forget. I never tell anyone that I meet the story until it kind of comes up. There's been people I've known for a couple years, some comedians I know, and we'll be talking, and they've heard of the story but not seen the documentary, or something. So we'll get to it, and then like I said, I've been friends with a comedian for a couple of years, and then I'll be like, "Oh yeah, well they'll mention it." I'll be like, "That's me," and they'll be like, "Wait, what? You're the guy?" And it, like, the whole idea is, I don't I don't want that to define me. I'm proud when it comes up. I'm happy to share this. There's some things. I've had so many people that have been inspired by the story, who've wrote me. I'm lucky to have these people who saw the movie or read the book or met me when we were doing screenings of it, and send me stuff that they're like, they told me in the moment. We had these buttons we would do, and they said, "I'm dying to," and then it was blank, and they would
Hmm.
someone would be like, "I'm dying to write a book. I'm dying to ride across the Sahara on a camel," that kind of thing. And then these people send me stuff on Facebook, and it's their
Amazing.
book that they wrote in the wake of that. And so I was inspired by other people. It feels awesome to inspire others and then see them create that thing. So I love that angle of it. But I'm also a cynical comedian. I am a cynical comedian who, if I heard the story about someone else, I'd be like, "Yeah, oh, he's still alive. Yeah, he's still still going. Obviously, he wasn't dying the best." You know what I mean? I know I've met
Right, right.
people who are like looking at me like, "He seems pretty healthy. Like, doesn't seem, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem as bad as that." So I do my best to, yeah. If someone knows me through that, like, I share the story. If they don't, I like them to get to know me first without the story, because I think it just, again, then it just adds something, and I like to kind of, yeah, I guess, have it both ways to answer your question. Like, when it not serves me, but when it inspires someone, yeah, I love talking about it. But when one on one, I love people to know me for something else, and then later be like, "Oh yeah, that's a part of it. That's even cooler that I knew that guy, and liked him, and thought he was funny, and then I learned this other, that was the guy." So yeah, but it's a weird juggling of it, sometimes.
Well,
Yeah,
to speak to that, which I find this is pretty amazing about our journey because we met 2004.
yeah,
We did 33 shows in 23 days in Iraq
yeah,
together.
yeah,
You're the first person I was with where we got shot at,
yeah,
standing on stage. Mortars came. We,
yeah,
we we were in it, and I knew out of the gate, I love this guy. We're gonna be friends forever.
yeah,
And then I moved to New York. I went to New York, and we kind of lost touch. And I went on my journey to do my stuff. And I came back to LA, and we reconnected. And you told me about the movie, and I went up to
yeah,
Sunset, and I brought a guy I went to theater school with who was going to be a comedian. And went and we watched it,
yeah.
and it like made me feel like I wasn't a good friend.
Oh no, not at all. That's awful. I hope you don't feel that way.
No, and I'll tell you why. Just because it was one of these things where I was like, damn, I love this guy. He went through all this, and I'm over here dealing with my own shit, trying
Hmm.
to do it. And I made like a vow because I think it'd been like, I don't know, like maybe like 3 or 4 years since we had talked. And I was just like,
Yeah,
well, I gotta make sure that I stay in touch with him. And then 2 years later we reconnected. So I moved it up a year.
Right.
No,
right.
but it was one of these things. It was one of these things where, and just rewatching it was just like, man, that's not who you're defined to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It hurt me as a friend. Just go, God, man, you want to be there for your friends, especially people that you love like you. But that's not who you are in my books.
Oh, thanks, PJ. That makes me feel really, really good. And you're a great friend for even having that thought. To Sam's question on that, and this, I think, hopefully will make you feel a little better on that angle. I was defensive of my friends on that angle of protecting them from that. Like, I had friends who lived 2 doors down from me who were like, wow, I can really tell in that scene how down and depressed you are. And I didn't know that about you then. You always seem like an upbeat guy. And again, we all have, the face we put on outwardly. It's the thing, you guys know it from dealing with people who've been through trauma and stuff like that.
Right.
There's that the part of depression is the alone. It's the by yourself. And, again, that's why you surround yourself with friends. It's great, but they can't be there all the time.
Right.
And that's when it seeps in, and that's when you're by yourself and you have these awful thoughts. And so, yeah, I purposely, you could have been living with me and not experienced it, because I would have protected you from it. Like, it was my crutch or my thing. So yeah, you were exactly what a good friend would be, was to not share that with me, if that makes sense. Like, like you can only distract someone, I think, who's depressed. I mean, I'm not a therapist, and I don't mean to compare any of what I went through to the different levels. I remember I don't want to name, PJ knows the guy, but I'm not going to name him. But I remember when Robin Williams died, I happened to be on the road with some guy, and he put some stupid tweet out where he was like, I can't believe he killed himself. He's not thinking of his family and friends. What a jerk, and blah, blah. And people just jumped all over this guy. And then we were riding. He's like, Steve, you're a level-headed guy. Like, I just thought what I was saying. I thought that was fair. And like, I was depressed, and I thought about killing myself, but I didn't do it. And I was like, how can you not think that there might be another level of depression that you didn't get to? Like, what are you even talking about? Are you not that smart? Like, so I'm not calling myself smart, but I know that there's different levels of it. And we all deal with it for sure on our own. And some of us have a better capacity to handle it. Some of us just never get to the depths. But again, that I'm here, PJ, is a testament to your friendship at some level. Do you know what I mean? Like that we are still, that we're friends here 20 years later. Yeah, that stuff meant to me. That's part of the reason that got me through all that. But yeah, you did everything you could. So yeah.
I'm not looking for forgiveness.
I appreciate that.
It just turned into a confessional with Father Steve. No, but what I really, it was one of those things where, when you do something like when you go overseas and you do, Steve was in the Navy. We bonded on these trips, and you go, and he had that same passion of like, there were some people, I'm not gonna get into details on that trip, but there were some people there who were just like wanting to check something off, but Steve was the guy who was like, look, man, every single one of these shows, we got to give 110% because this is how important it is. And the show that always sticks out to me was we were in Djibouti. It was 110 degrees, 90% humidity, and we were drenched, giving everything to these troops. And you were right there, drenched. I think I have a picture. I'll have to find it of us drenched. And we gave everything in a place no one was going to see us except for people we had so much respect and thankfulness for. And that's why I think you're one of these people that people gravitate to in a way, because that's how you carry stuff. It's a testament to your character, of the person that you are. And dude, I just love you. It's just great.
Well, I love you too, buddy. And I remember those shows. Yeah. Specifically because again, I am I don't know. I'm a talker comedian. There's nothing funnier. I feel bad for anyone who's seen PJ. You know what a great performer he is. But he's so physical the funniest thing to see is him be physical in 130 degree humidity and 120 degree heat. Like to me go up there and talk into a microphone for 20 minutes and then in the back of my head be thinking, I can't wait to see PJ up here sweating his ass off in this gross thing. Like, it's just great. It's so it's so funny. I remember to let you know that there's those things, those touchstones again, both ways. I remember coming to see your one-man show, PJ, here in LA, and that was one of the things that inspired me in a downtime where, again, it's a kind of thing. Sometimes we just don't voice things, and that's why I want to go back to saying that I think the sharing portion of what a lot of our lives has become is a valuable thing. That again, if I had went through this today, it would have been something I shared. If I had the idea, there's a 12-year-old kid out there who gets Facebook for the first time from his parents and would see a comedian and be like, I want to do this when I'm a grown up. You know what I mean? I didn't have the balls to say that when I was 12 years old to anyone. And now it's just more prevalent. And I know it sucks when we see everyone sharing their, what they had for dinner last night. Who cares? But there's the other side of it too, where these connections get made, and we're much more willing to help people than we used to. Be like, it's never going to happen. We're much more a society of like, you can make that happen. And again, that might be bad in some ways too. But I think there's more possibility today.
In your journey, you had two impossibles. But you had a health impossible and a comedic impossible.
Yeah.
And I had this feeling of like the comedy helped.
Yeah.
You hear about how laughter and having a goal and all these things like move ahead. But I've just seen laughter and comedy help so many people. And when I revisited your story, those two impossibles and that drive and that laughter and hearing it, like my question, I mean, do you feel like that was part of your healing?
Yeah, I do, and not to the point of like laughter heals. It's the best medicine, all that kind of stuff. Right. Yeah, I know I know you're not saying that, but I would just say that's the of course the cliche. Like it's the medicine that's kept me here, the real medicine. You know what I mean? Right. But that being said, because I've thought about this a lot, again, I get to go up and share laughter with people most nights. I get to hear their laughter back. I get to laugh with my friends and the comedians who are the funniest people in the world that take it to a different level, and just kill me. And you get to see your friends be funny. It's the best. And I almost think of it as I don't know if you read Steve. It's a twist on Steve Martin's Born Standing Up. He says, like, the reason he got in, some people asked him why he got into entertainment. He's like, well, why wouldn't you want to get into entertainment? You know what I mean? Like, it just seems so common sense. Like, to Sam's point about the deathbed, the looking back, like, I don't know in the end if we can't quantify it. I can't say that it's made me healthier or helped me heal, or that's what's helped me psyche or bump me out of depression when I have it, or those kind of things. But why wouldn't you want your life to be that way? Why wouldn't I want it to be filled with the laughter of being on stage and sharing that each night? And you know what I mean? If you got to look back, no one would choose the depression angle, right? Right. You remember every time. You would remember the time you and I were making fun of the guy who sat on the helicopter in the area we told him not to. Oh. And then he got sand in his ear, like just making fun of that guy. Like, again, like that's those are the things you would choose that way every time. So it's just the better road. Whether anyone in 3,000 years never finds the part to say that laughter helps in healing, it's just the better way. It's what you want to heal for in the first place, right? So you can be on that road.
And I think that's actually a perfect transition to our closing question. So Steve, how do you want to be remembered?
This goes back to your earlier thing, Sam. We were talking about like how things can change, how one thing can be the thing you're aiming for, and then later you don't have to aim to that high. I remember when Mike Singletary, I'm a Chicago Bears fan. Mike Singletary was one of the greatest linebackers ever, 85 Bears. And I remember him retiring and someone asking him that. And he was on the field. He's retiring from football as one of the greatest of all time. And him saying like he wanted to be remembered as a family man and everything. And I was like, well, this is bullshit. Like, what are you talking about? You want to be remembered as this menace in the backfield. What are you talking about? Like, but I kind of get it now. I get it. Like the value changes. Yeah, I want to be remembered. Yeah, as a good friend, as someone you could laugh with. Of course, I on the career wise, yeah, you want to be remembered as a at one point I wanted to be one of the greatest comedians of all time. Now, I'm like, okay, I hope people quote my jokes after I'm gone. Like, I hope so there's a couple that still stick around and people are like, oh, that guy was a great writer, those kind of things. But yeah, I think the friendship and the love and the family part, that seems to take it over more. Yeah, it's a good guy that would help you if you needed it. I think that ends up being about as much as so much is out of our control, right? That is one thing that I hope I've covered it. How lucky I've been with everything, both medically and then career wise, and even the trek to Letterman. How much luck and help I got from other people, things being at the right time. So I feel there's so much luck involved in life, anyways. That what you can really control out of it is so little, and those two things is are you nice in general? Are you nice to people, and did you help people when you can? That's two things I know I can control, and if people said that afterwards, that I think that'd be enough.
I can vouch for that. You're one of the best dudes to be around.
Oh, so. Awesome! Thanks, PJ. But back at you. I think that's I think that's why we're buddies. It's something we recognized in each other immediately. Besides the Navy tie, it's like, yeah. You're like, because again, I know some guys I knew in the Navy that I'm like, that guy was a douche. Like, but immediately, I'm like, PJ and I would have been best buddies wherever we had met.
Yeah, I think you guys are all right.
Thanks, Sam.
No, seriously, Steve, thank you so much. This was awesome. Really appreciate you.
Dude, you're awesome. Really, it was awesome.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks.
We have a lot of people to thank for this latest episode of In Stitches. First, to Steve Mazan for joining us, for sharing parts of his story that have been told, but also a lot of parts of his story and experience that haven't been told. We're just really appreciative for him. Also grateful for our executive producer, David Bobrow, for all the work he puts in from start to finish on these episodes. And our comms team, Matt Condon and Kristen Howard. Most of all, thank you to all of you for continuing to join in, continuing to listen, and continuing to spread the word. We really have been grateful for you and continue to be grateful for you.
Yes, thank you guys very, very much. And you know where you can find us on all the social media. We are Facebook page, we got Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and we appreciate all the messages we're getting, all the retweets, and all the great reviews you guys are leaving. Please keep spreading the word about In Stitches, because we want to keep bringing you interesting conversations and interesting people.
So thank you. This has been In Stitches.